They thought she was gone forever. Her boots were found near the wire fence of a hostile compound, and whispers spread quickly through the base. Captured, maybe worse. But 12 hours later, Elena Ward walked back through the gates, not empty-handed, but leading 7 prisoners, the very same fighters who were supposed to have taken her. What happened in those 12 hours became the kind of story soldiers tell for generations. Welcome to Truth Untwists, where we uncover untold stories of courage, strategy, and the moments that reshape history. If you believe these stories deserve to be heard, hit that subscribe button and join us. The beginning. Nobody expected Elena Ward didn't look like the kind of soldier who would change the course of a mission. At 28, standing just over 5 feet tall, she carried herself more like a marathon runner than a fighter. On paper, she was a cryptologic linguist, trained to analyze intercepted signals and piece together intelligence. To most, she was simply the intel girl. But Elena's story didn't begin in a classroom. She grew up in the mountains of Colorado, raised by her grandfather, a Korean War veteran. He taught her to read tracks in the snow, to navigate with just a compass, and to find her way home through storms when the mountains turned dangerous. Survival wasn't a hobby in her family. It was a way of life. By the time she joined the army at 19, she could move silently through the woods, identify the type of boot from a footprint, and predict shifts in weather just by studying the clouds. While her peers leaned on technology, Elena trusted her instincts. An analyst hiding in plain sight. At the intelligence school, instructors noticed something unusual. She didn't just study maps, she understood them. In survival training, she lasted nearly a week evading capture when most students folded in 2 days. When evaluators finally found her, they realized she had doubled back in her own tracks, climbed an impossible ridge, and disappeared into terrain nobody thought could be crossed. That was when a quiet unit within Army intelligence took interest. They didn't need someone who looked like the strongest or loudest. They needed someone who could vanish into enemy territory, gather information, and walk out unseen. Elena fit that role perfectly, precisely because everyone underestimated her. The mission that went wrong. In eastern Afghanistan, her team was planning a high-risk rescue. A Taliban cell was holding 3 aid workers, 2 nurses, and a logistics coordinator in a fortified compound. The briefing was led by Captain Derek Morrison of the 75th Rangers, a man confident in drone feeds and satellite imagery. Elena raised her hand. She had tracked the cell for months. Their patterns showed they moved prisoners every 3rd night at 0200 hours. That night was the 3rd night. Morrison waved her off. To him, she was just support staff. But Elena knew the danger. She had already walked the ground disguised as a local woman. She had mapped tunnels satellites couldn't see, counted guards, and even marked the commander's habits. Her warnings were dismissed. Orders were final. The Rangers would hit the compound at 0300. A choice without permission. Alone in her quarters, Elena thought about her grandfather. He once told her, "When your gut says the plan is wrong, don't wait for permission. Act." The prisoners wouldn't last until 0300. She made her decision. She dressed in local clothing, sandals instead of boots, her posture matching the women of the village. To cover her tracks, she left her combat boots near the wire fence, making it look as though she'd been caught. Then she moved toward the compound in silence. Inside the compound, she slipped through a collapsed tunnel she had discovered weeks earlier. Where others saw a cave-in, she saw a narrow crawl space just wide enough for someone trained in mountain survival. The guards outside the prisoner's cellar were distracted, predictable as always. Elena's timing was flawless. She moved inside and found the captives tied, gagged, and weary. One of them, the logistics coordinator, carried himself like someone with military training. Even injured, he had the calm eyes of a man used to danger. But time was running out. Voices echoed upstairs. The buyers had arrived early. The deal to sell the captives across the border was about to happen. The bluff that changed everything. When the door opened, Elena stood calmly in her disguise. The commander hesitated, unsure of who she was. In perfect dialect, she warned them. American Rangers, North Perimeter. They're already moving. To sell the illusion, she pulled out a copy of the operations order she had memorized from the briefing. The commander's radio crackled reports of movement outside. Fear spread. They believed the raid had begun. Then came her final move. She told them the escape routes were compromised, the trucks disabled. They could fight and fall or surrender to her while they still had time. It wasn't gunfire that broke their will. It was doubt. One by one, they laid down their weapons. The walk back. When Elena appeared at the gates of the base 12 hours later, leading 7 bound fighters, the entire camp froze in disbelief. The captain who had dismissed her couldn't even speak. His assault team had reached an empty compound, just as she predicted. Meanwhile, Elena had saved the hostages and captured the enemy without a single shot fired. The debrief lasted hours. Commanders struggled to make sense of it all. How had an intel analyst, written off as support, pulled off what an entire Ranger squad might have failed to do? The truth was simple. She trusted her training, her instincts, and her courage when nobody else would. Recognition earned Colonel Mitchell, who had doubted her from the start, finally stood before her in respect. He admitted his judgment had been wrong and that her tactical assessment had saved lives. A Silver Star recommendation was filed, and operational planning protocols were quietly rewritten to ensure intelligence specialists had a voice in the field. Elena didn't celebrate. She simply cleaned her rifle, steady and calm, the way her grandfather taught her. To her, the mission wasn't about medals. It was about proving that being underestimated could be her greatest weapon. The last word. Weeks later, the Belgian logistics coordinator she had rescued admitted he was more than he seemed, a former Special Forces soldier embedded with the aid group. He told her, "You move like smoke." "Where did you learn?" Elena smiled. "Colorado winters, and a grandfather who taught me that the best warriors are the ones nobody sees coming." Elena Ward's story is a reminder that true strength isn't always loud or obvious. It's the quiet courage to act when the world doubts you. If you want more untold stories of resilience, strategy, and the human side of military history, make sure you're subscribed to Truth Untwists. And if this story inspired you, share it with someone who believes ordinary people can do extraordinary things. Because sometimes, the smallest shadow carries the brightest light.